I call the Honourable Member Catherine Delahunty.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker.
Tēnā koe.
I'm going to take a short call on this issue because my colleague who is the expert on justice is doing something else. But it's very important that we're on the record because we are, at this stage, opposing the bill. We're not saying we will continue to oppose it all the way through. We look to the Select Committee process. We believe in improving justice law, parole law and all of those other strategies. And we think that the Select Committee could make some fair improvements to this bill, and we will be watching it closely. We would like to be able to support legislation that improves things for victims and offenders, but at this stage we can't support the bill as it's currently written. The bill purports to reduce unnecessary parole hearings for offenders who don't acknowledge their offending and have made little or no effort at rehabilitation, and by increasing the maximum time between hearings, and particularly for offenders serving sentences of 10 years or more. We have real concerns about the strategy of keeping people in prison longer if they can be rehabilitated. And we recognise, as does everybody, that there are people who need to stay in prison for the well-being of society and that for whom rehabilitation is a very challenging issue. But we also believe there's a large number of people who are incarcerated at the moment, and we need to remember that this country has one of the highest rates of incarceration, who are not in that group and who may be moderately unsocialised at this time, but through genuine rehabilitation can, and support once they are out of prison, can actually become part of the peaceful citizenry of a decent society. That's a big challenge. And so we support all parties' efforts with rehabilitation, but we think that this particular bill in lengthening paroles could affect that in the sense that there are a number of experts who are concerned about this bill and don't believe that it's actually going to work to motivate offenders to join programs. And if we are going to motivate them, then those programs have to be quality, they have to be available, they have to be robust, they have to be culturally appropriate, and they actually have to address the issues. And I think when we think about some people in prison who are illiterate, who are dyslexic, and who have experienced extreme abuse, those people in engagement rehabilitation is quite a sophisticated business to make changes in their lives. It's not simple for them to change their lives. It's not simple for programs that may not exist or are overloaded at this time to actually work. And so we do listen very carefully to people who work on justice, and we do acknowledge some of the suggestions of people like Kim Workman, who says that these changes could encourage inmates to lie. He says rehabilitation programs could be inundated and are not resourced at this time to cope. And there could be an argument that the change could force prisons to improve access. And the problem is that it could also deter innocent people pursuing appeals. So there are a number of interesting issues associated with cost and associated with victims' rights as well. The statistic that only 5% of victims attend parole hearings is an interesting statistic. And in reality, there's also a challenge we would make around cost. And we would argue that the idea that saving $10,000 per hearing by delaying parole hearings doesn't mitigate against the cost of that $95,000 that it costs to keep an inmate in prison for another year. So this bill doesn't necessarily address the issue. If you're just thinking about, if one is thinking about financial efficiency, it doesn't necessarily make for a more efficient system in terms of cost. The reduction in parole hearings may not be the most robust way to actually deal with rehabilitation. So these issues, it may not be the best way to incentivise prisoners engaging in rehabilitation. And I think we at all times need to be thinking about how we can move people from incarceration into community. And we are not convinced yet that these strategies will, one, save money, and two, will actually lead to the kind of motivation that is being discussed. So the Green Party, we take a stance on justice that is very much about what is going to work. And we've had a lot of punitive rhetoric in this country, and it's very easy to support the throw away the key rhetoric when you see the pain that some people have inflicted on others in this society, and that some of the unthinkable things that have happened. But that is actually a small percentage of the prisoners who are locked up, sometimes for quite a long time. So we need to look at that other body of prisoners, that large body, and look at why is it that they have ended up where they're ending and how we can change that so that they actually can leave prison, ideally much, much earlier, before the University of Crime makes it impossible for them to change and regain a relationship with the community. And there are many experts in this country who talk about the critical period, which is once they have reached parole, once they're about to leave prison, that's when we really need to look at it as well as before. So there are some serious issues here about parole and about postponement orders, which already exist as a mechanism but are claimed not to incentivise behaviour change. We are not yet convinced that this bill's going to do what it says it's going to do. And so we'll be coming to the Select Committee and hoping to hear from those experts and from community groups who work with prisoners' rehabilitation and with victims' rights as well, to see if this bill actually does what it claims to do and whether it will actually make a substantive difference to the justice for all parties in this situation. There is no... the regulatory impact statement doesn't claim that the Bill of Rights has been breached in terms of parole delay, in terms of prisoners' rights, but there may be interesting Select Committee submissions on the issues of rights and what that does in terms of disincentivising people to rehabilitate if they feel they're being hard done by. So there are complex issues around change in the prison system. There are complex issues around justice. We're not sure if cost is the driver, this is going to save the money. Every year that we keep a prisoner in prison reduces the chance of rehabilitation. It reduces the chance of saving money to the state and to the taxpayer. And we think that a more creative, innovative approach to justice is needed at every step in the justice system before we get so many people locked up for so long with little hope of change. And if we take away hope that they can get paroled, and if we try to force them in a way that doesn't work to stay longer in prison, it's not going to work. So rehabilitation, we applaud it. We just hope it's going to be properly resourced, and we will be watching this bill very carefully at the Select Committee so that if we see genuine change that's going to support genuine rehabilitation, then we are open to it. But at this stage, we are unable to support the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the honourable member.